1 week out, and there are many, many questions. But let's begin with a few things we do know. The race is closer, and the FBI's October surprise is a factor. The Washington Post ABC tracking poll now shows a 1-point Trump national lead. Now, that's a statistical tie, but still the first time he has been on top in that poll since May. Hillary Clinton still leads if you take the smarter approach and average the most recent national polls, but even that 4-point Clinton advantage in our poll of polls is down quite a bit from a week or so ago. Another but, and this one is important, we still see no evidence of a big shift where Donald Trump needs it most. That is in the state-by-state chase for 270 electoral votes. Advantage Clinton remains the state of play, but there is clear volatility out there. So to the trail, and let's begin in Pennsylvania, one of the deep blue states. Donald Trump is desperate to turn red. If you watch this event that's undergoing, again, we'll get to Mr. Trump live in a minute. His vice presidential candidate is speaking now. That joint event speaks volumes. Unlike Hillary Clinton, remember, Trump does not have a stable of A-list surrogates, so sharing time pairing up with his running mate is a risk. It means they can only be in one place at once, cuts in half the places the Republicans are campaigning today. But it's an event Trump clearly thought worth it to add meat to the Obamacare attack, and perhaps also hoping this picture helps with voters who doubt Trump's temperament and his policy chops. So let's begin here. Their closing argument, clearly Donald Trump wants to talk a lot about the FBI investigation, but they do hope in a place like Pennsylvania they can get more conservative voters to come their way with this Obamacare pitch. It strikes me, because he doesn't have the president, the vice president, he doesn't have Michelle Obama, it is a risk, essentially cutting in half the number of states you're touching today when you're going to be in Pennsylvania and then Wisconsin with your running mate.
Yeah, he has got to find states that he can add to the map because he's currently locked out of a path to 270. So he has to figure out new places to go. And I think that's why you see much more talk about Michigan and New Mexico and even Wisconsin from the Trump campaign. Yes, Pence is in Pennsylvania today, but I was struck by the fact that Pennsylvania is not among the states where he is now adding money for his TV broadcast here in the final week. And this has been his challenge all along, is how does he get to 270 without making inroads into the Obama 2012 map? They thought they'd have a shot in Pennsylvania because of the sort of demographics beyond Philly, but his numbers in Philly are just so bad at stuff.
But you really need either a bunch of small states or a couple of really big states to flip the dynamics. To me, there are 3 states to watch right now. They're Pennsylvania, which nobody thought needed to be watched a week ago, Florida, and North Carolina. If he can flip the dynamic in Pennsylvania and North Carolina, you've got a game changer. Clinton is tripling down on Florida, but some Democrats in Florida think it's a little too late to be making those investments.
Well, you have the president going to Ohio today, too. They're trying to get turnout there. That's the one that looks like it's moving Trump's way more than others. It's always been more competitive for Trump. But if you look at this, we're going to wait. We're going to hear from Donald Trump in just a few minutes on Obamacare. That's the stated goal here. We'll see if he comes first to the FBI investigation. Yesterday, he was talking about the FBI investigation. And again, if you're Donald Trump and sometimes you're off message, I think this is the right way to characterize this. Don't get into the weeds of the investigation, but essentially to try to get voters of a certain age who remember the 1990s, or to educate voters about the 1990s, that if you elect Hillary Clinton, this could go on for a long time.
We will be facing the very possibility of a constitutional crisis. We're going to be tied up in court for the rest of our lives with this deal. She's not going to win the election, but I'm just saying, if Hillary is elected, she would be under protracted criminal investigation, likely followed by the trial of a sitting president.
Now, the message there again, if you notice the locator, war in Michigan. Yesterday in Michigan, today in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump's trying to get one of these big blues to turn red. But that message there, essentially, if you elect her, be prepared for years and years of drama and investigation. Maybe work?
I would think that would work, certainly, as you said, with a certain segment of people who remember the 90s. And if he were to make that argument every single day at every single stop between now and next Tuesday, I suspect that would work with a small
with the
percentage of
single
folks.
biggest obstacle to Donald Trump winning this election is college-educated white women at the moment.
If you can bring them back,
That's what if he brings them back in the. Whether it's we're talking about Warren, Michigan, the suburbs of Detroit, whether we're talking about Philadelphia and the suburbs there, whether we're talking about Charlotte or Winston-Salem, North Carolina, that is his biggest problem. Is Clinton drama? Is that the message?
Absolutely. And it's also a different kind of Clinton drama than he was talking about even a week ago. A week ago, it was talking about accusations against former President Bill Clinton and, women, which only stirred what people have been hearing about Donald Trump being accused of sexual assault. This is a much sharper argument. The question, as it always is with Donald Trump, is will he stick with it? Can he stay disciplined enough when he's got a when he's decided what his message is?
Well, he's going to get a little help. I want to play you this sound from the Speaker, Paul Ryan, but I'm going to ask this question as we play the sound in this context. This is the House Speaker, Paul Ryan, who says that he early voted for the Republican nominee in an interview. He won't say Trump's name. When he early voted in Janesville, Wisconsin, he said he voted for the Republican nominee because he voted a Republican straight ticket. Listen to Paul Ryan here, echoing Donald Trump, but Paul Ryan also says he didn't know that Trump's coming to Wisconsin.
For those of us who lived through the 1990s, Steve, it's sort of a feeling of deja vu. And the point I keep trying to make to younger voters who did not live through the 1990s, this is what life with the Clintons looks like. It's always a scandal, one after another. Then there's an investigation. And what happens, Steve, is you never know what's coming next.
And again, Paul Ryan said he didn't know Trump and Pence were coming to Wisconsin today. And then he went on to say this is why it's critical that that Republicans get elected to Congress. Right. In case Clinton wins and you have the investigations. Not, we need Donald Trump. Never mentioned his name.
No, there's an historic split right now in the party. That the Speaker of the House is, the highest figure in the party, is basically like totally detached from the party's nominee to the point where, as you pointed out, he literally won't even say his name. He can barely do media interviews. He's doing the safe harbor there of Fox and Friends, and it's remarkable because he can't answer questions about his own party's nominee a week out that are probing in any way because he can barely support his own nominee. It's an extraordinary division. It just goes to show, though, how vulnerable Clinton was. Given all that we're talking about here, Speaker of the House won't say Trump's name, that she is, still struggling to put this thing away in some respects. Given the division on the Republican side.
But you say was. You say how Clinton. You say how vulnerable she was. I'm going to say how vulnerable she is. We still have a week to go in this election. She still has a state-by-state command of this race. But we have a week to go in a very interesting climate. And proof the Clinton people are nervous. A little bit concerned, a little nervous. They're not panicking. We'll get more to what she's saying lately. But they're up on TV with a new ad. This was supposed to be the week that she tried for a mandate. She wanted positive ads about policy. She wanted to talk about, if I'm elected president, this is what I want to do for the country. She wanted to say in her TV ads, I look forward to working with Republicans. Instead, Donald Trump's own words aimed at protecting her lead among suburban women.
Putting a wife to work is a very dangerous thing. When I come home and dinner's not ready, I go through the roof. Grab him by the
Donald Trump walked into the dressing room while contestants, some as young as 15, were changing.
Yeah. Standing there with no clothes. You see these incredible looking women.
They had hoped not to have to do this week. They wanted to shift to more positive because they understand how polarizing Hillary Clinton is. They wanted to end the election on a high note. That tells you something important. And they went back up in the air in Wisconsin last week, and they're back up in the air in Colorado this week. We'll see if they go up on more states.